Hey everyone, I am thrilled to have something a little different today. I've got two guests with me. Got a little webinar style format going on with the podcast today. Excited to have Dion Nicholas and Dan Watkins with me. Dion is the co-founder and CEO of Forethought, and Dan is the current president of Forethought. Just moved over from Qualtrics. We have a lot of good friends over there at Qualtrics, so I've stayed in touch with Dan and some other people he brought over to Forethought with him, and have been trying to get this for quite some time. So I'm excited to have you both with me today.
How excited to be here.
Awesome, Joe. Great to be here.
Thanks, guys. Hey, I wanted to give you both a chance to kind of give a little bit of background on yourselves. We'll start with Dion. Give us a little background on Forethought and where you kind of, where the idea, I always love to hear kind of the background of how a company started from the founder and where you're kind of at now, and then we'll kind of get into some other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. So, hi, everyone. I'm Deon Nicholas, CEO and co-founder of Forethought. We started Forethought on a mission to make everyone a genius at their job, and we're starting with customer support agents. And so the idea behind Forethought, a little bit of background on myself. I'm an engineer by training. I've built products and infrastructure at companies like Dropbox, Facebook, and most recently Pure Storage. The idea behind Forethought is really near and dear to me. I've always been interested in how AI can help people become smarter. It actually goes back to high school for me, actually. So being a math and computers guy, I was decent at math and computers, but very bad at subjects like history. So at the time, I built an AI that would read my notes and quiz me on the material. And that's how I got through history class. And so that was my first foray into AI, into natural language understanding. And since then, I've just been obsessed with this idea of like, hey, if AI can help me at school, can we use AI to help people at work? And so, you fast forward a gazillion years, being an engineer, ramping up on new projects, or having friends who are customer support agents or in IT groups, I realized that everyone has that information problem where if you could have AI or technology help you, quote unquote, be a genius at your job, you can do so much more. And so that's kind of the backstory of Forethought and why I co-founded Forethought with my co-founder and CTO, Sammy. We're really excited about being on this mission.
Awesome. I really love that. Cloud App is a key piece of a lot of customer support teams. And it's so important to not only have the technology to help them, but also, the training and certainly being able to get through things quickly with simple question answers that, Forethought can provide and advancing things. It's really cool to have lots of great tools in that space.
Awesome.
Dan, I want to hear, your journey to Forethought. How did you kind of first connect with Dion? What really ignited your, fuel to leave Qualtrics, where you were for a very long time? And, what most excites you about what's going on?
Yeah, so my story, it sounds like it's all connected, but I think in a lot of ways I got really, really lucky. About 18 years ago, I started with a company called Focus Services where people would outsource their customer support and sales. It went really, really well. I led a site there. And then a friend of mine who I'd been friends with since we were kids, like, hey, Dan, there's this survey software company. I'm going to go work there. You should come. And I was like, no way. I'm not going to go work in surveys. Surveys aren't interesting. Then I met the CEO, Ryan Smith. And there was something different that we could do, that we were going to go help organizations make data-driven decisions. We were going to go help customer support teams, market research teams. That sounded really exciting. Went and did that. 13 years there, some of the best years of my life, where all 5 of my children were born, some of the best friends I could have possibly made. And after 13 years, I looked back and said, what were my favorite things that I did? And it was when I got to lead the entire business units. So one of my favorite groups was the research services team. And we got to lead sales, operations, go to market, every element of that, and had teams all over the world. And I started thinking, what do I want to go do next? And I wanted to go lead a company. And I thought originally I was just going to go start my own thing. Then about a year ago, I was walking in San Francisco with a good friend of mine, Sumit, and we walking across this intersection, and he's like, Dan, stop for a second. I've got to introduce you to this guy. And so we went backwards a little bit, and he's like, Dan, meet Dion. He's one of the best leaders and engineering minds I've ever met. Dion, meet Dan, one of the best go-to-market and operations leaders I've ever met. You guys should exchange phone numbers. I don't know what this is going to mean, but you guys should exchange phone numbers now. So we exchanged phone numbers and started to become good friends. And for 6 months, we would just talk, catch up, kind of what was going on. Talked a little bit more about what he was doing, go to market, and how to go start sales. Worked that way. And he's like, Dan, we should work together. I was like, Dion, we should work together. How would this look? And he's like, come and do this with me. And I said, what does that mean? He's like, look, I need somebody that is really strong in go to market, operations, and business processes, and that wants to go and be part of this. And I said, okay, let's do it. And it was really easy. It had nothing to do with Qualtrics. Qualtrics is one of the best companies out there on the planet. Got nothing to say but incredible things about the entire team there. It was more about going and being part of AI, being with a CEO that cared so deeply about their people, had a vision for how customer support in so many ways could be augmented. Other elements of it that the customer support teams don't like can be fully automated, and be able to expand that across the whole business. So that got me really excited to go not just impact customer support, but sales, internal ticketing, and the needs of the entire business.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an impactful company and product. It has a lot of opportunity, integrates with AI, and that's a core element of it. I also think, I talk about all the time that customer support's like the last line of defense, but also maybe one of the most important pieces of the customer experience.
For sure.
So really, really cool piece to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get into some questions. Dion, I want to ask you, with kind of everything. So I was kind of part of Adobe's, shift to experience business, digital transformation. I saw like Microsoft and Salesforce and Oracle and everybody talking about digital transformation and AI and machine learning and everything for the last, 7 years. And we all kind of got crammed into 7 or 8 weeks at the first kind of part of this year, at the end of Q1. What do you kind of see the modern workplace looking like, both internally with maybe remote work? I know you guys have multiple offices, and then also externally with how you're kind of integrating with customers and tool sets and other things.
Yeah, absolutely. With respect to the modern workplace, I think there's a ton of shifts happening that we've kind of been expecting or promised for many years. So, for example, artificial intelligence, automation, things like that, as well as like we're seeing a lot of changes to the way people are getting work done, right? With work from home, I think even in a year or 2 years from now, a lot more people are going to get work done remotely. A lot more people are going to be using technology to do work and have conversations like this over the internet rather than directly in person. And the part I'm most excited about is how AI is involved in the modern workplace. Again, it's a technology that we've been talking about, since like the first neural networks were invented, I believe, in the 80s. And so we've been talking about artificial intelligence for a long time, but now is when we're seeing it come to fruition. And so whether that's, as Dan was talking about before, automating tasks that humans or people don't really want to be working on, or whether that's helping them, augmenting them, assisting them in their workplace. So, customer support agents helping them get work done, helping engineers write code and things like that. We're starting to see that artificial intelligence, and particularly natural language processing, natural language understanding, is becoming something that can really be a companion, a tool for all knowledge workers, right? And so I'm super excited about being able to help kind of tackle some of these really previously uncrackable tasks.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I kind of in the tail end of one of the teams I was managing in Adobe was this team in India, and they were working on natural language processing. Really fascinating to kind of see the tools they were building to kind of understand those things. And do you feel like, where do you feel like we're at with that in terms of businesses being able to deploy things that are related to AI, and also just them integrating into, an existing workflow?
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is I think AI has really taken a big leap forward since right around 2017. I would say right around when we were starting Forethought. It started with data sets around question answering, around information retrieval. Like you saw the squad data set coming out of Stanford and a few other things there that really helped natural language understanding take a big leap. Kind of similar to how computer vision, about half a decade before started to take a big leap, and you started to see things like autonomous vehicles and entirely new industries crop up. I think natural language processing and natural language understanding is just starting to get there. And then there was another big leap in terms of models like BERT, which came out, which basically became state of the art across many different human natural language understanding tasks. And so with kind of this advance or all of these advances in AI, in natural language understanding, we're also seeing the cost to kind of deploy new systems come down. There's a lot of tooling, for example, with AWS and a few other places. And so we're starting to see a ton of really, really good tools. Obviously, we're building Agatha at Forethought, and we're seeing a lot of other companies in the space as well. And so I'm very excited that it's actually becoming a lot easier for companies to deploy. I think it still takes engineering minds or engineering talent if you're going to try and build this stuff internally. But we're definitely seeing, like, if you can use a vendor like a Forethought or others, you're going to start to see a lot of previously uncrackable tasks being tackled.
Really cool. That's great to kind of get an update on where you're at with thoughts on AI. I think it's really important, definitely a part of the modern workplace. As we've kind of shifted, to this wildly remote area, we ran a survey last fall at Cloud App, and we found that over 50% of younger generations were working remotely anyway, the majority of the time. Bay Area is really expensive. Commuting's hard, so people were already trying to find ways to not necessarily go to the office. What have you kind of learned as a leader? What are tips and tricks you've learned? First thing I always say is, this is not remote work. This is like working from home during a pandemic. But what are some things that maybe you've learned during this time that will really be helpful as you, lead your company and kind of move towards that?
Yeah, so I think I have learned 3 really important things in kind of this shift and with everything going on in the world. The first I would say is invest in and focus on your people. One of my friends, the way they described it was like, during times of uncertainty, you bear hug your people. And so what that means is, a lot of people are having uncertain times, whether it's questions about their own employment, things like that, just with everything going on with the shifts to work from home and being in a pandemic. And so just like focusing on, hey, we're going to help you set up your home office. We're going to help you make sure that you're getting, help or support in any way you need. And basically giving people stability and security in a time like this. I think that's the first most important thing. The second, I would say, is over communicating. We're in unprecedented times across many different fronts. And so as a leadership team, we're adapting and learning all the time. And so it's okay to share that with your team, that, hey, here's the thing that we have not encountered before as a company, as a leadership team. We're communicating, this is the stance that we're at right now, and this is what we're learning as we go, and we're going to keep everyone updated. And again, that's in the interest of making sure people have security. And even when the answer is I don't know, they are kept in the loop. And we work as a team in order to kind of get these problems solved. And then the last thing I've learned, and that I'm really starting to grow on and really starting to internalize, is that vulnerability can be a superpower as a leader. And what I mean by that is during times of uncertainty, people look to a leadership team, but not to just quote unquote be leaders with a capital L, but again, to be people that they can trust, to be people that they can relate to. And so sharing what's on my mind, the places where I'm struggling or any vulnerabilities I have, I found that it's helped me connect with my team. And I really think that becomes a powerful bond that can help you kind of move through these times of uncertainty.
I really love that. I love that you focused, on really recognizing what people need, both within your team. And I think that segues really nicely to a question I want to ask Dan. It's also a time to protect your customers. We all kind of turn into, whether you like the term or not, like a wartime CEO. So, protecting your customers, considering ad spend maybe a little differently, and really just making sure you have the runway you need as a company. Dan, what's something that is really kind of the root of, or the DNA of a good experience that can really help you guys during this time to make sure that customers stay happy, they don't churn, and you can kind of work with them to make sure that you keep the customer set you have?
Yeah, so as you think about that, the root of a good customer experience has to go down to where are they actually experiencing it. They're experiencing it in the product. Make sure that your product team takes it seriously. Are they listening to the customer feedback that's happening? But then it's what are their interactions with your people? And so if I look at the very core of what creates an incredible customer experience, it's the people that you hire. And it was another thing. One of the main reasons why I like Forethought so much is Dion introduced me to each member of his team, whether it's the head of engineering, Sammy, whether it's the leader of customer experience, Rose, the head of operations, Jenny. Each one of them at the core of who they were kind and good people that actually cared about the customer. So any organization out there that struggles, like, man, our customer sat's really low, our NPS is really low, it's probably because your people need a change. You need people at the very core that are supporting your customers, that are selling to your customers, that actually care about that customer. Because when the times are against you, you're going to come up with something like, you know what? I actually agree, customer. You can't afford this right now. We're going to give it to you for free for 3 months. Yep. Within my first week of starting here, Dion announced we're going to go out and roll out this product for free for anybody that needs it because so many companies are struggling. So at the very core, it's who your people are. Then once you have a good core team, people that care, they genuinely care about your people, you care about your customers, then you start laying on top of that technology that empowers them. It's not that exciting for an employee. They're really well educated, they're bright, they're hardworking, they care, and then all of a sudden you have them do work that could be automated, that could be completely automated, and they don't want to do. So what you do is, and that's where I think companies like Forethought come in. We're able to go in, automate the stuff that people don't want to do, and then help them on the hardest problems that are actually mentally stimulating. Because if you can go and just offload the stuff that nobody really wants to do, it's mostly busy work, but the customers need nonetheless. They need an answer. How do I reset my password? But it gets old if that's the 100th time you've answered that day. Then you go into it and we provide them with the best answers and the best way to go and solve really complicated customer problems that they're solving. So I think great people, then on top of that, you lay really good technology that empower those great people, and you're going to have a great customer experience.
I like that. I like that you kind of went with the, internal, external. I think it definitely starts with the company, like you said, cultural, like obsession with, retention and loyalty and CSAT, NPS, or whatever you're kind of doing to monitor those things, and action as well. So you're not just saying, hey, we're a customer experience led business, or we changed all our product names like Qualtrics or Adobe. We changed all our product names to be this experience product, but we're terrible at customer experience when you look behind the curtain. So it's so important to not just give the lip service, but really do it behind the scenes as well.
100%. As you go focus on that, it's a big deal. What are you going to go and do to walk the talk, or to walk the walk, talk the talk? And I think great companies like Forethought care about it. And I saw it at Qualtrics as well, where they focused a lot on that.
Dion, I'd love to actually have you jump in on that too. What do you kind of determine, what's the DNA of a good customer experience, if you have anything to add on to Dan?
Yeah, no, I think Dan hit it on the head. It's like employee, kind of your team starts that culture, and then that kind of bleeds out into how you treat your customers. The only other thing I would add is really just, Dan touched on this a little bit, but in the product, really listening to your customers. One of our values at Forethought is put customers first, and really listening when you're building products, before you're building products, doing user research, and just getting as many people in the company as possible to spend time with the people you're building tools for, the people that you're serving. And so I think that's the only other thing I would add, is really just creating a customer-centric product as well.
A couple, I love that. A couple of things we're doing at Cloud App that kind of makes me think of that is we all have a support day once a month, from the CEO, which he's actually doing more than one day because he enjoys it for some reason. He's a psychopath. um, but it's really cool to like see, obviously we experience the product and we have our own bugs that we report, but like seeing customers' frustrations and really trying to figure out how to improve them. And then also like I am obsessed with reading the reviews on like G2 and Trust Radius or Capterra, whatever. And those actually are great for like marketing and content fodder. I mean, from the 5 stars to, the worst ones, really help us hone in our messaging, hone in our content, make sure that we're putting out a good product.
I think that's amazing. The CEO down, everybody spending a day on customer support. That actually reminded me, like we actually did the same thing, not the same thing where it was the day, but every single person at Qualtrics, when a customer called in, if it rang more than 3 times, these sirens would go off. And that meant anybody should just now go pick up the phone to go and support them. And so the entire sales team needed to be trained on being able to support the customers, because more important than getting that next customer was caring for the one that we have. And I think that makes a ton of sense. That's exciting to see what you guys are doing at Cloud App. I'd like to hear more about that. Maybe we should do the same thing, Dion.
Yeah, exactly. I'm already on it.
It's pretty fun. It definitely like helps you have some empathy for being a customer-led product. I'd love to, Dan, getting back to you, I'd love to get into, you mentioned some things you're doing, obviously, with when COVID hit. What are some other things you guys are doing to create an experience, through the entire journey, from hitting your website to contacting sales? Or what are some things that you guys are doing internally to really focus on customer experience?
Yeah, so a big part of what we're focusing on is hiring in advance, so that as we win new customers, they trust us. They decide, you know what, we're going to go and use Forethought, that we've already built out the infrastructure to handle them. I think a lot of companies, they hire once they're in pain. And so then it's like the customer struggling with you through that pain. What we've tried to do is to go in advance and say, okay, we know how many customers are going to be moving forward over the next 6 months, over the next year, based on our forecasting, based on our go-to-market motion, and based on our targets. How do we go and hire in advance, ideally 6 months in advance, so that by the time that customer needs to be onboarded, supported, implemented, you already have a trained person ready to go and do that? Whether that's your first customer support rep, your first implementation person, your first professional services engineer, your additional product people, your additional engineers, but hiring in advance. So one of the things that Dion and I spent a lot of time on is how many people we're going to go and hire, because we want to go grow revenue. How do we go make sure those customers are loved, they're cared for, and that we've got enough to go do that? And then Rose, who leads our customer experience team, is making sure that every one of them gets trained and onboarded in a way that represents what she learned from Dion, what she brought herself as just a customer care organization, an organization that cares from the beginning and cares deeply. Then the second thing that we go and do is make sure that the onboarding experience, that you don't have to go wait for work for a Fortune 500 company to have an onboarding experience, that you actually get all the information that you need. So we spend a lot of time working on how are we going to onboard each and every employee that comes in, so that they're trained right. So that very first either deal that they're working on if they're in sales, project that they're working on if they're in engineering, or customer support or customer experience they need to handle if they're in the customer experience org, that we go and onboard them. And then as an organization, we're looking at data all the time. We study our Net Promoter Score. We study our CSAT. We study our employee engagement. And then as we look at those, if those 3 are all going well, then we know that the organization, our customers, are going to be cared for.
It's really important. Yeah, I think it's you hit pretty much every organization, and I think that's the important thing. It's not just a customer support issue. It's not just a sales or like external facing issue. It's really getting everybody on board.
100%. It's a whole company thing.
So as this has been a really fun discussion. You guys have been great. I really appreciate your time today and kind of diving in on some things. I want you to kind of put on your magician's hat, pull out your crystal ball, look into the future, make some bold predictions. We'll start with Dan. What do you think the future of experience business is, and maybe even include, how Forethought is a part of that?
Yeah, so the future of experience, I think if you go and you read a lot of the reports that are out there, like Zendesk just came out in their 2020 trends report and said 74% of people that are loyal to at least one brand. If you go and read reports coming out by McKinsey's stuff by the Customer Experience Professionals Association, what it also talks about is the vast majority of people every single quarter leave a brand that they used to be loyal to. And so if you have these conflicting reports, you have almost everybody's loyal to a brand, but that loyalty is very short-lived if the customer experience doesn't go well. I think the times of the past where you could, with Twitter now, with all the different data that's coming out on social media, that ability to go and screw up once isn't really there. You've got to go in and from the beginning as an organization, you're so committed to your customer that you're already working on those things. And so I think one thing is just that we have to be aware that it's not like where you stick with your bank for 30 years. You don't have a good experience with your bank, you're going to move.
Yeah.
People aren't sticking to the same car brands even like they used to. And so as you go look at that, I think that's going to go across tech. Net retention rate is going to be something that investors are going to be paying attention to even more than before because it's so easy to jump from one technology to another. And then last but not least, I think employees are not going to accept that they're going to be required to do mundane work. Whether you're working in a factory, whether you're working in the fields, whether you're working in a tech company, they're going to expect that as an organization that employs them, you've done everything in your power to let them work on interesting projects. And I think that's a really, really great spot for Forethought to be in, is because that's exactly what we do. We're going to go and empower the most entry-level employee to the most sophisticated employee to be a genius in their job. We're going to offload the work that they don't want to do, and we're going to empower them with the knowledge at the right time so they can provide experiences that customers care about.
Yeah, it's kind of like you have your, paying customers, and then Dion, Dan, and your, the rest of your management or executive team has your internal employee customers, and you need to make sure that you are engaging them and training and providing what they need so that they can be effective, but also, really endear to the brand and the company.
Exactly. You're constantly faced with this tug of war. Do you go and invest in more product? Do you go and invest in your people? Do you go invest in your customers? Do you go invest in go-to-market? And the answer is yes to all of them. and you're going to have to do it right.
I love that. Dion, let's go up to you, and you can get kind of the closing word. Where do you see the future of experience business going?
Yeah, so when I think about the future of the experience business, I think about two things. One is that customer experience is going to become proactive rather than reactive, and two, I think there's a lot of data that's finally going to start to get pulled together, and so I'll tackle kind of both of these two things. So what I mean by proactive is that a lot of customer experience happens when somebody's tweeting at your company and they've had a bad experience already. But what if you could predict when they're about to have a bad experience before they do? What if you could predict what you need to build into your product in order to help your future customers and future customer experience? So I think with AI, for example, we're starting to see that. But in general, teams are starting to realize that customer experience is really the forefront of your brand. And so becoming more proactive about it, making it a mandate within your company, I think that every modern company is going to have to do that. And then in order to do that, the means by which you do that is really by tying together feedback loops. And so again, customer experience can be the leading edge of your product. Knowing what problems people have and what problems people are going to have can really inform what products you should be building 3, 6, 9 months from now. And it's kind of this well-kept secret within customer experience, is that that's actually where the best data, the best product ideas come from. And so I'm super excited at Forethought at being able to do that with our AI in the loop, whether that's helping automate mundane tasks or reply to questions or even assist agents. We're able to see what are the main problems that customers are having that are not being addressed. Now imagine if in 3-6 years, your company would have the forethought in order to take all of that information and turn that into product problems so that your future customers never have to experience those problems again. That's the future that I'd be very, very excited to be a part of, and quite frankly, to potentially bring about.
That's really awesome. Yeah, it's kind of like the knowledge bases that the Zendesk and Help Scouts and whatever brought about has been really great for people to find what they need and self-serve. But then the next step is like what you said, Dion, finding those triggers of like, hey, this person just had an error uploading and they had to close their program and reopen it. And they're obviously trying to troubleshoot before they connect with us. So what is something we can serve them up that, AI is helping identify and serve up that will solve their issue? Or maybe it's connecting with an agent like, hey, are you having a problem? How can we help you? And it's like that next level of Zendesk, Help Scout, Forethought, those types of things.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Great insights from both of you. I really appreciate your time. And, one of my favorite things about doing this type of thing is just learning from great leaders out there. So I appreciate your time today. Definitely everyone listening, go check out Forethought. I've been playing around with a lot of it the last couple of weeks since we set this up, and really cool opportunities there. And I'm excited to see what Dion and Dan and the rest of the team figure out.
Thanks so much, Joe. It's great to see you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.